if you look at the areas of work that you are discussing here, which is around forced labor, around bonded labor, unacceptable forms of work, child labor, hazardous child labor, nothing can be more socially unjust, in my view, than these forms of breaches of human rights. And creating that space to build awareness amongst the public of why it is wrong to send your 11-year-old daughter to the fields instead of to school, why it is wrong to keep someone in a situation of forced labor, why it is wrong to force someone to work 12-hour shifts in a mine. That is a responsibility that we carry and that we rely on partners like you to support. And I am, I'm always amazed when I see numbers that 3.4 to 4.3 million individuals in Pakistan find themselves ensnared in situations of forced labor. That is dramatic, and that is such a devastating breach of human rights and workers' rights and labor rights that it is a task that we cannot address alone, but it is a task that we rely on collaboration with partners, including yourselves, to achieve. Again, I want to thank you for being here today. I am proud to have the opportunity to meet you, and I trust you will benefit from today, and we remain available should you have any questions. And I want to thank the facilitators and of course my good colleague Faisal, who's behind this, together with Sophia, and wish you a very productive day. And I apologize to Faisal for not using your speech, but today I felt a little bit like speaking from the heart, as it were. So thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Geir. Thank you very much. I think when Geir is speaking from heart, it is actually good opportunity for you also, because you had some questions for me, but I said let's park it for our country director to come. If you like to ask him anything, you probably have the opportunity. Or I know some of you have already requested for separate interviews, which I will schedule with the country director when he will be here in Karachi next time. But probably today is not the day for that. So if anybody has a question, please, you may ask, otherwise we'll go for the group photo.
Happy to take a few questions.
Thank you.
There is a minimum wages in every provinces. Likewise, in there is 37,000. But factory owners and industrial don't implement them. Do you have any mandate to help out to laborers to implement these policies of government?
ILO has no police function. ILO has a bibliography of conventions. There are 191 international labor standards, of which Pakistan has ratified 36. Sometimes I say only 36, because I think Pakistan could probably do more to ratify ILO conventions, and I know the government is quite ambitious in terms of the ratification calendar going forward, but still the number is rather low. Whenever, so Pakistan, for example, and I'm just using an example, has ratified the Convention on Minimum Age of Work, which sort of regulates minimum age for entrance into paid labour, to prevent child labour, for example. And Pakistan has to report to the ILO every 2 years on how they are doing in terms of implementing that convention. And then ILO scrutinizes the reports and makes observations if we see any shortfalls. Sometimes, if an ILO member in Pakistan feels that the government is in breach of a convention, they can refer the matter to the ILO, and we examine the situation. We ask the government to comment, and if we're not satisfied with the answers, then we bring it to our governing body, and it is discussed, and if it's still not satisfied, then we have further measures we can take to address the situation. We do not have authority to enforce on the government to do anything, but the power we have is to name and shame in international fora a country that is in breach of an ILO convention. And the same would of course apply to an issue like minimum wage. If a country has ratified conventions that regulate minimum wage and is in breach of that convention, the matter could be pursued in the same way that I explained.
So my question is this, that you know that Pakistan is the signatory of the ILO convention. Of course, Pakistan has did a lot of steps on the suggestions and demands of the ILO, and did a lot of the legislation as well. And you saw that in past there was a bonded labor, but now there is no more bonded labor, but there is a forced labor as well. So what you see that what kind of the steps Pakistan has taken on the suggestion of the ILO, and what Pakistan should need to take more steps to make the a convenient environment for the labor in agriculture sector and in the industries.
And if I may add, so where does these number come from? Are the ILO numbers about the forced labor, like somewhere between 3.4 to 4? And why does it important for Pakistan to eradicate forced labor here?
Why it is important for Pakistan to eradicate forced labor?
Are there some implications, international implications for
right.
Pakistan?
Okay. To answer or to try to address your question, when Pakistan ratifies an ILO convention, Pakistan makes an obligation to take the provisions of that convention and make it part of the national law. So from the time of ratification to the actual convention comes into force, there's a period of 1 year usually, during which the country integrates the provision of the convention into national law. So that is the step taken by the government. So it becomes part of national law. Now, I can give an example of Convention number 144, which is the ILO Convention on Tripartite Consultation. It is a convention that says whenever the government undertakes to draft a new law, for example, concerning the world of work, the government is obliged to consult the most representative employers and workers' organizations in Pakistan. So by ratifying that convention, Pakistan has made that part of their national law on social dialogue mechanisms, which means that if Pakistan adopts a law on minimum wage, for example, without consulting the employers and workers, they are in breach of that convention. Now, breaking conventions happens all the time, because ratifying a convention is quite easy. That is a one piece of paper saying we hereby ratify the convention. Implementing the convention, moreover, that is often the challenge. And this is not unique to Pakistan. This happens in every country, that ratification is done, and then application of the convention becomes very difficult because it requires resources, it requires the mechanisms to be in place at every level, it requires political commitment at every level, and sometimes we see failure to comply with labour standards. So every year the ILO in our headquarters in Geneva, we host the International Labour Conference. All the member states of the ILO get together, and during that conference there is also a discussion every year of countries that have breached ILO conventions, and then we make recommendations to the governments in particular on how to implement. So the ILO's supervisory mechanism, as we call it, is in place precisely to ensure that countries that do break conventions do not face impunity, but they are actually named and shamed. You know, your question, why is it important to you know, if conventions are in place, but we still see that, you know, there is bonded labor, there is child labor. You know, that is because, you know, why is there child labor, for example? That's because there is still pockets in Pakistan of extreme poverty. And we see in those instances, as well as in instances of crisis we saw after the floods in 2022, for example, increases in child labor because families simply do not have the social safety networks to fall back on when crisis hits. And the alternative is to use whatever resources the family has to survive. That's why we see children end up in the fields, for example. But why is it important? Well, I'll give you one example, because if Pakistan or a government does not take concrete action to comply with fundamental ILO conventions on child labor, on forced labor, on discrimination, then it will have consequences, not just moral consequences because it's intrinsically wrong, but it would also have consequences for the economy, because then you would have a number of countries, particularly in the EU or the US, that says we do not wish to trade with a country that does not do enough to safeguard children against child labor, for example. Pakistan is one of 8 countries that benefits from a preferential trade agreement with the European Union, the so-called GSP Plus agreement. It means that Pakistan can export textiles to the European Union without any tariffs. It is very lucrative, and it means you have access to a big market, and that makes the textile industry a big earner for Pakistan. Now, in order to benefit from this trade agreement, Pakistan has to comply with a number of conditions, and those conditions are largely international labor and environmental standards. There are 27 conditions, and amongst those are respect of ILO's fundamental principles and rights, international labor standards. So if the European Union is not convinced that Pakistan is doing enough to fight child labor, to fight forced labor, to fight discrimination, to allow trade unions to operate, to allow workers to bargain collectively for their rights, and to safeguard occupational safety and health, then the European Union can tell Pakistan, you know, you are no longer meeting the requirements of the GSP Plus, and we cannot provide you with the preferential trade agreements that we currently have. So there is a very good economic argument, in addition to the human rights argument, for a country to address issues like forced labor and bonded labor. Yes, please. Sorry, do we
Yes.
have time for this?
Yes, we have 10 more
Yes?
minutes
You
allocated.
know, I'm
for
on a
this.
roll here. So.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
I just wanted to ask one question. What's your observation that do Pakistan lack the resources, infrastructure, or the mindset, or the awareness that people still don't think that the forced labor is they exist in Pakistan that way what ILO define? And the second question is that related to what ILO expect from the journalists, that what can be done and through media that to aware people about this forced labor, and also
Right.
you know
Okay, maybe I'll take the last question and then I'll
Yes.
address both at the same time.
Actually, you talked about our work not, easy to get published. So there is a question in the form of suggestion. To get more coverage. I think the idea, the aim that can be we can get through the solution journalism. If we tell our editors the problematic stories, it is kind of very boring and hard to digest for our editors, for our reporters, and even our readers also. But if we find some solution angle in this, when I say solution journalism, that does not mean that PR journalism. It also tells about the problem within. I can quote my story last year, which was about localized issue. It was about a law which was passed in Sindh, and by the virtue of that law, first time women cotton workers they are the government fixed wages. So if these this data is provided or case studies provided by ILO in the form of Pakistan's context, that should be add to coverage. Thank you.
I am conscious of time though, so I'll leave. Maybe I'll have to.
You have to leave
that for another time. I didn't answer your question about the numbers. I guess you can
Yes,
tell them where the figures come from. I think just to address your question first, I fully agree, and I think that's what we are trying to do. To try to, ILO has a very heavy, policy mandate, but we need to sell it through very human interest stories and to show impact on the lives of individuals where the solutions have had a changing impact on lives, and I think we're trying to do that, and that's also where we would certainly like to work with you to make that to do more of that, because I can talk endlessly about the mandate of the ILO and the high level narrative, but showing the impact on the lives of individuals is key. Just remind me of your question, just briefly.
Yeah, do Pakistan lack resources, infrastructure, what that or awareness?
Pakistan is a fascinating country, as you all know, and it's a middle-income economy. It's a nuclear power. Yet, if you look at some social indicators, they are regrettably on a level with sub-Saharan Africa. So it's a country that has very particular challenges. It's also a country that, you see many development partners say, it's a middle-income country, so we're not prioritizing Pakistan for collaboration. So that's a challenge. But I do see a country that has potential, significant potential for growth, significant potential for improving working conditions, and also a country where we see significant political will to do so, although it's a slow process. Only last year, ILO signed with the government of Pakistan and the Employers Federation of Pakistan and Pakistan Workers Federation a Decent Work Country program, to a 4 or 5 year work plan for 2023 to 27, where we set out some big milestones to be achieved in the coming years, where we would be working particularly with the partners to achieve progress, and some of those areas are, I think, of critical importance. One of them is employment creation. And you know, Pakistan has the 5th largest population in the world, but right now it has the 9th largest labor force. Now, if you think about it, that means you have a significant proportion of the population that has not yet reached working age. So if you fast forward a few years, you're going to have a generation of youth entering working age, looking for jobs. And right now, the domestic economy cannot absorb all these labor market entrants. So you're faced with a potentially large number of unemployed young people in a situation of economic volatility, with the political climate being the way it is, and that is a combination you don't really want. So employment creation is key, particularly for young people. And the second point that I want to highlight from our Decent Work Country program is the need for social protection to cover more people. In Pakistan, I think it's around 9% of the population, you know, that's not a lot. 9% of the population has access to at least one social security benefit. Yeah, unemployment, employment injury, pension, whatever. 9% has access to at least one. The global average is 46%. So that means a huge proportion of the population is unprotected in a situation of shock. So if you face unemployment, you have no benefit. If you fall ill, you have no benefit. If you are hurt at the workplace, there's no benefit. If there's a natural disaster, you have no benefit. So that's a very vulnerable situation for many people, particularly those in the informal economy who are unregulated and have very few rights. And then labor standards being the last area where we are prioritizing and to support Pakistan in implementing their commitments under ratification. That is key, as I mentioned earlier, both for very rights-based reasons, but also for purely economic reasons for Pakistan. So those are sort of the main areas where we are collaborating with the government. On that, thank you. Very interesting questions. I'd love to continue the dialogue, and I hope we can, at some point, have more conversations. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Geir. I know you need to leave soon for another meeting.